All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. Sure to thank our Talmud Torah sponsor for the month of Iyar, an anonymous sponsorship with Akar Zatov to Hashem for all of the blessings He has bestowed upon us, for a full shlema for Devora Leah Bas Chai Rivka, and may we all be Zochem Hashem to witness the imminent coming of Mashiach Mihira B'Yameinu. Amen. And of course, as always, we dedicate our shir, our learning in the schus of our hostages, may HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring them home to their mishpachas, b'shalom and b'karov, and for the incredible hatzlacha of our soldiers. May they be Zochem Eretz Hashem to unbridled hatzlacha, unequivocal hatzlacha b'chol ma'aseh yadehem, and may they too come back to their mishpachos b'shalom and b'karov. But with that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today, a little bit of a shorter daf today, but Baruch Hashem still packed with incredible information. So today's daf is Tzadik Zayin, it's 97. We are picking up on Tzadik Bava Mabez 96b, about 20 lines up from the bottom. We actually began this case yesterday, already a little bit, but here's our opportunity to Eretz Hashem just begin it again from the top. Boy Rai Brachama. So Rabbi Brachama asked the following kasha. So we'll say, so remember again, just to give us the context in terms of how we got here. So the Gemara originally had a very interesting question about the nature of the relationship between a husband and his wife's property. The Gemara began by asking, is he a shoel? Is he a sochar? And very quickly it became apparent that he's really neither. And we saw that again based on a takanos usha, in fact, he really has the status of a lokeach, of a purchaser. So kind of along those same lines, the Gemara is delving a little bit more into some of the interesting cases that could come up between a husband and his wife's nichsei malog. So the Gemara says, so we'll say, what happens, who is responsible for me'ilah when it comes to a woman's nichsei malog? Now, what's the case over here? What's the case? So again, the Gemara says, look at Rashi, mi ma'al, kigon shenafel anachasam yavia mishenises. So what happened? So Rachel's married to Ruvain. Rachel's father died. Rachel's the sole inheritor, so she inherits her father. Now what occurred? V'imahen ma'os shal hektish. Now included in the estate that she inherited was consecrated money. Ve'in yodin shehin shal hektish. Now ultimately, again, no one knew that it was hektish. So now Rachel ends up inheriting hektish money that neither she nor her husband were aware of. So now the Gemara says, who committed me'ilah? Who committed me'ilah? So actually, let's just read it inside in Rashi for just a moment. V'amar Rabbanan, Baal zocha b'mechal nechasim nishtamish v'lachol aperos u'b'takana zu nasa shaliach b'nichsei hektish liknosam v'kasaka da'etcha shezohi yitzi asam l'chulan v'afilu ba'odan tzurin u'minochen mima ba'otza zu. So we'll say, so here's what's interesting. At first glance, you say to yourself, who committed me'ilah? Why would anyone commit me'ilah? In other words, in order to commit me'ilah is not a function of ownership. Me'ilah is a function of unsanctioned usage. So I don't understand. So Rachel's married to Ruvain. Rachel inherits her father. Rachel's father in his possession had consecrated money. So now we're asking, who committed me'ilah? No one committed me'ilah. I don't understand. No one did anything yet. So the Gemara is suggesting as follows. The Gemara is suggesting, or really positing, or asking, since, as we've established, a husband has peiros, has rights of usage in his wife's property, does essentially the rights of usage make it tantamount to usage, and maybe upon the wife's inheritance of the money, and therefore the husband's immediate rights of usage in that money, it's as if he's committed me'ilah already before he did anything. That's the shayla. So the Gemara says, on one is this is so man limo. So let's analyze this. Who would be liable for me'ilah? So the Gemara says limo bal. So if you're going to say ultimately again that the husband is committed me'ilah by dint of the fact that he inherits that he acquires the usage rights over these monies. So the Gemara says de'atera nechalei delikni isur lo nechalei delikni. So you could easily say that again, when the husband acquires rights in his wife's property, those rights are to enable him to utilize property in a permitted fashion. Perhaps we could say that his rights of usage never devolve upon something that is prohibited. Timal ihi. So if you'll say ultimately again, maybe the wife should commit milah because after all, she is the owner, right? She is the owner of this property. So Timol Ihi, delikni. So again, remember, the wife, as far as she's concerned, remember, she doesn't really have a say in all of this, right? All this entire thing is being foisted upon her. Rashi says, Ela al karchach tiknu lo chachamim. Right? So Chazal instituted this entire process against their will. Nimalu Bezdin. So maybe we'll say, let Bezdin be in violation of Me'ilah. Since again it was Bezdin who kind of orchestrated this entire thing. Look at Rashi. Nimalu Bezdin. So Rashi says, Shel Yisrael, Sheba Osodar, Shekol Takanos Mishpat Tuluya Bahen, Val Yedehen Noagos, Chukos Hamutukanam Mitzibor Me'az, Vahavi Kimosha Tiknu Lo Heim Kinyon, V'nim Tzu Hein Hamaknun L'nichse Hektish V'otzim L'chulin. So if he's Bezdin, since Bezdin are the ones who are attacking in Usha, that a husband should get usage rights of his wife's property, so maybe they should be responsible for Me'ilah. To which the Gemara says, no. Kiev Drabanan Takanta, V'amru Balokeach Havi Lehetera, the Surah Lo Avid Drabanan Takanta. No, of course not. Because again, when Chazal made their takana, that a husband should become like a purchaser in his wife's property, they only meant that takana to devolve upon permitted things, not upon prohibited things. Ella Amarava, rather Rava said, Baal Ma'al. Rava said like this, now we revert back. So again, here's what's interesting is, the Gemara is presupposing that someone is going to commit Me'ilah. The shaila is, who's committing Me'ilah? So therefore Rava comes full circle and Rava says, Baal Ma'al, it is the husband who commits Me'ilah. When? L'chishi yotzi. So Rava say now this comes full circle and kind of aligns with what our previously held understanding was. The Baal commits Me'ilah. And when would the husband commit Me'ilah? L'chishi yotzi. When he does something with that money. When he does something with that money, midi dahavi amotzi maos hektish l'chulin. No different than anyone else who goes in and takes consecrated money and goes out and uses it for mundane purposes. So Rabbi look at Rashi. Ela amarava be'odon surin umunachin lo kinam baal velo yatzu l'chulin ve'in kan me'ilah el cheshiyotzim l'chulin baal ma'al. So Rabbi said this is very interesting. So therefore Rava says, and I think this is in line with the way we automatically thought before the Gemara kind of stirred the pot on this, which is when the husband acquires usage rights of the wife's property. So let's go through this again. Rachel's married to Reuven. Rachel's father dies. In the father's estate that now Rachel inherits is hektish money, consecrated money. So now remember again, what's everyone's relationship to this money? So Rachel is the owner, and Reuven has usage rights. We're trying to figure out who commits Me'ilah. So we'll say, so the question presupposes that someone is committing Me'ilah from the outset. Comes along Rava and says, that is incorrect. No one commits Me'ilah. When you have a pile of hektish money that's sitting there, right? It's obviously owned by someone besides hektish, right? At the end of the day, no one's committing Me'ilah. When does Me'ilah occur? When someone uses it in an unsanctioned way. So essentially it's going to be the husband, since the husband has the usage rights. So at whatever point Reuven does use the money, right, and uses it for some mundane purpose, at that point it'll be Reuven who goes ahead and commits Me'ilah. Incredible. Let's go back there. Says the Gemara. Good. Ibailu. We'll say some really interesting cases here. Ibailu. Kachash basar machmas malacha mai. So we'll say, now watch this. I borrow a cow or an ox from Reuven. Okay, it's a simple case. We'll say I have a shoel. So I'm a shoel. I borrow an ox from Reuven. I use it. Again, no negligence, nothing. Everything is good. The issue is when I return the ox to Reuven, as a result of the work, the ox is weakened. The ox is weakened. Again, no negligence, no overstraining, nothing. But again, I guess what we contemporarily call depreciation. The ox obviously is in a different state than it was when I borrowed it. So what's the halacha? So Amar le'ahumir Rabbanan, Rav Chilkiah Breid Rav Avi Yishmei. So I will say, sold. One of the rabbis, Rav Chilkiah Breid Rav Avi was his name. Michlal dechi mesa machmas malacha mechayiv. So I will say, now here's what's interesting. The fact that the Gemara phrased the question like this, right? I borrow an ox from Reuven, and essentially the animal is weakened as a result of the labor. What's the halacha? Now, the fact that the Gemara asks it like that sounds like that if I borrowed the ox from Reuven and was working it in its normal way, and it died, that I would be chayiv. I'd be chayiv for that. To which the Gemara says, Lav, to which Rav Chilkiah responded, Rav Chilkiah, Lav lo'okma bikilsa she'ilta. So the borrower could say, I didn't borrow it to keep it in a cage. In other words, what does that mean? obviously, if I'm borrowing the ox, why am I borrowing the ox? Why am I borrowing it? Right? To use it. So we'll say, so it can't be, it's not logical that I would be responsible for something that happened to the animal in the normal course of usage. In other words, it's understood when you borrow something to use it. We'll say, the whole chap of renting something, borrowing something is baked into the rental, well, not being there, right? Included in the rental and borrowing costs. How do you come up with that number? How do you come up with that number? That number has to factor in that every single time you use something, it depreciates in value. That's the way using stuff works. I will say there is only one thing in this universe that you could use and there is no depreciation on it, and it's your neshama. It's your neshama. That's the power of the neshama. Everything else, when you use it, right, it's diminished. The more you use your body, the more it is diminished. The more you use your money, the more it is diminished. I guess you could use your money to make money, but even then, that's cyclical. The only thing in this universe that you could use without depreciation or diminution is your neshama, which just, by the way, is just such an incredible thing, right? That not only is it not diminished, but the more you use it, the stronger it gets. But that's it. That's the only thing in this world like that. Everything else, ultimately, the more you use it, the more it diminishes. So the Gemara says over here, Reb Chilkiah says, I don't understand, I'm renting it in order to use it, not renting it in order to put in a cage. Rabbi said, this is incredible. Ela Amar Rava, Lomi bai kichesh basar machmas malacha de pater. It goes without saying that if the Shon, Rabbi say, now understand, of course, we're assuming over here that you're using it in a normative way, that there's no negligence. There's no negligence. Right? So assuming that I borrow the ox from Ruvain and I use it in a normative way, and now what happens? I give it back. When I borrowed the ox was worth $5,000. Now if you were to sell it on the market, it'd be worth $4,500. Because again, that's depreciation. So obviously, I as the borrower, I'm not responsible for that. Or I can say differently, I am responsible for it, but where is that responsibility reflected? In the rent. That's why you pay rent. But the idea over here is there's no additional level of responsibility in that. Let's I always found this interesting. This is why, with rental cars, I always thought that one of the most dishonest things is when you rent a car, they look around the car and the scratch, and you're chayiv if there's a scratch. You're chayiv if there's a scratch. I always thought it's interesting, cars get scratches. That's the way that it works. Okay, you could tie a dent or this or that, but a scratch, anyway, side point. Right? So the Gemara says as follows. That's the best part, by the way. Israeli rental cars companies are the best like that. It's not a big deal. Right? If the rear bumper is smashed in, then that's a little bit. The Gemara says as follows. So the Gemara says, so therefore, halacha l'maisa, if I'm going ahead and renting it, and again, it's diminished, it's depreciated, I'm not chayiv for that. That goes without saying. So Gemara says, watch this. Ela afilu mesa machmas malacha nami pater. This is incredible, we'll say, but even take it a step further. Even if halacha l'maisa. Oh, 1 second, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Even if halacha l'maisa, it died in the course of doing its work, I'm also not chayiv. In other words, I borrowed the ox from Ruvain, right? The ox is doing its thing, and the ox died. Oxen die. And I will say again, we're assuming over here that I'm not negligent, right? I didn't leave it out in the blistering heat for 14 hours. Assuming again that I'm acting in a responsible way. This is called Mesa Machmas Malacha. I am pater. So I will say Da'amar lav lokman bekilsa shilta, because again I can say to Ruvain, I did not borrow the ox in order to keep it in a cage. That's the halacha. Now I will say this is actually incredible halacha. This is incredibly important because now we've seen as follows. Our entire understanding of a shoel is that a shoel is chayiv in everything, right? A shoel has complete liability. Now what the Gemara is introducing us to is that the only time we saw that a shoel doesn't have liability up until this point was when? Baal of Imo. Right? And Baal of Imo itself is even a complex case, which we're going to come back to over here, that the owner of the object has to be in the employ of the borrower at the time that the borrowing occurred. Okay, now there are two more exemptions. Two more exemptions are Mesa Machmas Malacha. Ultimately, again, if the animal dies just performing its normal act, right? Again, it's just working. No negligence. It just died. I am pater. I am pater. Or what we call, now obviously once that's true, then kichesh machmas malacha. If the animal was weakened, depreciated as a result of labor, I'm also pater. So we'll say, and this is codified. If we have time, I'll come back to it in Shulchan Aruch. This is in Shulchan Aruch Choshen Mishpat. Siman Shin Mem. I'll leave it for now. But in Metzia, if we have time at the end of this year, it's a short Amud Beis, I'll come back to it. But that is the halacha. Mesa machmas malacha is pater. Here we go. Let's go back there. Hu gavra. There was a guy who borrowed an axe from his friend. Reuven borrowed an axe from Shimon. So the axe broke. So they came before Rava. Amrle zil aisi sehadi delav shanis bei ve'ifter. So Rava says, look. So Rava says to Reuven, you're claiming the axe broke. That's fine. Go ahead and bring proof, bring witnesses that you were not negligent, or literally again, the lo shanis bei, that you did not do anything abnormal. Which means again, I will say this is very important, and this makes sense, that anytime you make a claim, so you can make whatever claim you want, you need to support it. So if you can bring testimony that to support your claim, great. If not, you swear. So I said to the guy, just swear that you are not negligent, and you'll be pater. Because we'll say this essentially would be a case of what? What would this be a case of? Mesa machmas malacha. Meaning Mesa machmas malacha doesn't just have to be an animal. Mesa machmas malacha means any time that damages occur as a result of normal usage of the item, one could be pater. V'ilaka sahadimai. What happens if Reuven can't find witnesses? What should he do in that circumstance? So Gemara says, Tashma do garva deshal narga mechavre. So again, we'll say another place. So there was a guy, Reuven borrowed an axe from Shimon. And the axe broke while Reuven was using it. They came before Rav. Amrle zil shalimle narga ma'alya. So Rav said to Reuven, you have to pay Shimon back a brand new axe. A brand new axe. Okay, so Rav Kana of Ravasi the Rav. So Rav Kana and Ravasi said, Rav, whoa, hold up there. Tzadik Zayin Amadav 97a. Dina hachi? Is that really the halacha? Is that really the halacha? Reuven borrowed an axe from Shimon. The axe broke, and now Reuven is chayiv to give Shimon a brand new axe. Is that true? Rashi says over here, Dina hachi? She'ishalim lo kli asoy umetukan v'hatnan gabi nizakin tashlumi nezek melamed shabaylim etaplim benavela sheshomer lo hanavela shel behemto shemesa aydei zeh shezikalo v'aleh mosef u'mishayim demeyan hachanami yashum. So we'll say first of all, they're asking two kashas on Rav. Number one, this seems to fly in the face of what we just said before, that halacha l'maisa, when you borrow something and the object is quote unquote mesa machmas malacha, it's damaged in the normal course of usage, that ultimately you're pater. But even if you want to say that you're chayiv, I will say, how do damages work? Generally the way damages work is the owner takes the broken object, right, or the carcass of the animal, sells it off, recaptures whatever loss he can, and then the damager, the mazik, is chayiv to pay the difference. Right here, Rav is saying to Reuven, just give him a new axe. Oh, that's not halacha. Rashi said, look at the end of Rashi. Hachanami yashumulo shivrei harishon va'alei yishlayim damav v'zeh yelech v'yitrach v'yikna lo kli acher. So I say, no. What should happen over here is, right? We should evaluate the cost of the broken axe. Let's see how much that's worth. Right? Sell that off, and then again, Shimon will have to pay Reuven the difference between the value of the broken axe, right? Or I should say, the value of a new axe minus whatever you can recapture for the broken axe. But why should Reuven be chayiv to give Shimon a brand new axe? To which the Gemara says, "V'shasik Rav." Rav was quiet. Rav didn't say anything. V'hilchasa kavase krav kahana v'ravasi. Right? Demahadra le tavrei or memali le demeimana. And in fact, that halacha is like Rav Kahana Ravasi. That halacha l'maisa, he gives, right? In this case, Reuven gives Shimon back the broken pieces, right? Let Shimon go ahead and sell off the broken pieces of the axe. We'll see what that is worth. You subtract that amount from the value of a new axe, and Shimon has to pay. Or I mixed up my borrower and lender. Okay, and Reuven, the borrower, has to go ahead and pay the difference. So I just want to point out that we have two different models, right? We have two different models over here in terms of repayment of a borrowed object. So again, originally we were saying that halacha l'maisa, Mesa Machmas Malacha. So ultimately, again, the Shoal is Pater. Shoal is Pater. This seems to be a case over here also of Mesa Machmas Malacha. Of where again I'm using the axe, and again the axe breaks. In this case, again, the bar am not chayiv to give the owner a brand new axe. Instead, the owner takes the pieces, sells them off, recaptures whatever he can from that, and I'm chayiv for the differential between that and the value of a new axe. So how we determine which case is valued by which payment? Stay tuned. We're not finished yet. Let's go. Ho gavra. The shal davla michavre. There was a guy, we'll call him Ruvain. Ruvain borrowed a bucket from Shimon. It's barred, the bucket broke. So Asla Kamed Rapapa, they came before Rapapa, Amarle, I see Sahadi de Loshanis Be Iftar. Okay, Ruvain, you're claiming that the bucket broke, right, in the normal course of usage. So that's called Mesa Machmas Malacha. What's Talacha Mesa Machmas Malacha? Swear that you did not do anything abnormal and you'll be exempted. That's it. The Gemara says follows. Another case. Okay, so both sides. These are seemingly straightforward cases of Mesa Machmas Malacha. Hogavra the Shal Shunra Mechavre. Shabbos said this is an interesting case. There was a guy, right? Ruvain borrowed a cat from Shimon. Now, why did Ruvain borrow a cat? Ruvain has a mice problem. Right, a mouse problem. So therefore, again, he borrows the cat in order to get rid of the mice in his home. Now, what happened? So the Gemara says, "Chabur ale achbari v'katluhu." This is interesting. The mice organized, right? The mice organized, right? And the mice went ahead and killed the cat. They killed the cat. So I say, by the way, you see such a tremendous Mussar Haskell. So I say, when the underdog unites, they can overcome even a much stronger enemy. This is the story of Klal Yisrael, right? We have been like mice surrounded by ferocious cats for generations. The secret of our success is that when the mice unite, nothing gets in their way. When Am Yisrael has achdus, we can overcome any and every single enemy. So here, so the cat died. The cat was killed. V'gat lua. Shabbos says, so now the shaila is, so again, Ruvain borrowed the cat from Shimon to take care of his mouse problem. And now again, the mice united, went ahead and killed the cat. So what is Ruvain's liability? Yosef Rav Ashi v'kami ba'ilei. So Rav Ashi was sitting and pondering this question. Ki hai gavna mai. What do we call this? Ki mesa machmas malacha dami. So I'll say, on one hand, we can say, look, how did the cat die? Doing its job. What's the halacha? When you borrow an animal and it's mesa machmas malacha, what's the halacha? You're pater. Right? Anytime you're a borrower, even though I both say, again, it's important to understand, even though a borrower generally has complete liability, but yet, again, in this case of liability, if the animal dies while performing its normal task, the shoah, the borrower is pater. So here, Reuven borrowed the cat to go ahead and hunt down mice. The cat was hunting down mice, but the cat didn't expect that the mice would unite. The cat is killed. This is called mesa machmas malacha, and therefore, again, Reuven, the borrower, should be pater. Odilm osadar olo. Now we'll say or not. Now again, what's the or not? What's the or not? This is a little bit of an abnormal case, right? This is not the norm. So it's not. So the cat died as a result of its work, but not really as a result of its work. It died as a result of a mouse rebellion, right? So the mice, again, that's a shtickle abnormal. So because it's a little bit abnormal, so again, maybe that's not called mesa machmas malacha. A very interesting case. So I'm leader of Mordechai Rav Ashi, Hachi Amravina Me'agronya, Mishmei Derava. So I said, this is an interesting case. So listen to this. So they're trying to answer this question by bringing a different case. Gavra denashi katluhu. Let's say a man was killed by women. All right. So Rashi says, "Denashi katlu." So Rashi says, no, not yet actually. First Rashi, "Denashi katlu lo haya lo lipol biadan." So I said, this is interesting. So obviously, again, some of these Gemaras also reflect certain societal right mindsets. So the concept that a woman would be able to kill a man, right? How could that be? Right? In other words, that a man is going to be stronger. So the notion that a woman would be able to kill a man would be unheard of. So the Gemara says, Gavra dinashi katlo. Listen to this. Lo dina velo daina. Ultimately, again, there's no legal case over here. Right? There's no legal case. Right? So ultimately, again, that halacha l'maisa, because this is not matzui, because this is not common, therefore, halacha l'maisa, there wouldn't really be a legal case. In other words, this is such an abnormal situation that should not have occurred. So the Gemara says, Ike de Amri. So others say, so therefore the Gemara is suggesting over here that in general, for abnormal cases that are just a yotze min haklal, there can't be liability. There can't be liability. So too, the Gemara is trying to apply this over here, that the case of mice ganging up on the cat to kill the cat is such an abnormal situation that there can't be liability for the borrower in such a scenario like that. So the Gemara says, Ike de Amri, achol ach berituva v'chavel amis. Others say, no. What was the case? The case is not where the mice ganged up. They unionized on the cat, but rather the case over here is where the cat ate too many mice. Right? And therefore, again, it became, I guess, if you eat too many mice, you become overheated, right? And it was killed by the overheating. So halacha l'maisa again, halacha l'maisa. So what is the liability over here? Umis. So we'll say. So now that's the case. So again, a case where the mice went ahead and ganged up on the cat. Everyone seems to be in agreement that there would be no liability for the borrower in that case, because that is such an abnormal scenario. What about a case where the cat is doing its job, eats too many mice, and as a result dies? So Yosef Ravashi v'kam ayin ba kahai gav namai. What is the halacha in such a scenario like this? Amalei of Mordechai Ravashi. Haki Amar Avina Me'agronya. So we'll say the Gemara is a parallel case. What's the parallel case? Gavra denashi katluhu. All right, so we'll say, so now a man who was killed by women. Now what's the case over here? Rashi says, or woman. Rashi denashi katluhu ba'al be'ilos harbe umes. He had a lot of active relations, right? A lot of active relations, and he died, I guess, like from exhaustion, all right, or overextend, whatever it is. He died as a result of overindulgence. I'll say overindulgence has been known to kill people. It kills cats, it kills people, right? So Lamaisa over here, the cat. So remember, we're asking, the cat went ahead and ate too many mice, died. Okay, what's the liability? So Gemara brings a parallel case. A man had too many acts of relations and died. So what's talach over there? The Gemara says, lo dina v'lo daina. No, there's no case there. There's no case. In other words, right, the heirs of the husband cannot bring the woman with whom he was intimate with to Beis Din, saying, you killed our father. You killed our father, with too much bia. You can't do that. You can't do that. That's an abnormal case, and therefore there's no legal recourse. So too over here, the case of a cat eating too many mice, overheating and dying, that's also an abnormal case, and therefore there's no liability for the shomer. I will say, here's what I want to point out for you, something very interesting. Even though a shoel is normally chayiv for own sin, right? Remember again, this is interesting, right? The shoel is normally chayiv for own sin, but apparently again there are certain cases which are just so beyond the pale. Right, just they're so abnormal that they're even beyond the status of an ones, and therefore again there would be no liability. It's very interesting. All right, so Amarava, Haiman de Baile Mishnah. So therefore, the Gemara seems to settle on that. Where halacha l'maisa again, the case of where I borrowed the cat, and the cat. Now again, if the cat died while just chasing mice, that's meisa machmas malacha, right? But again, if the cat died as a result of eating too many mice, that also seems to be a case of just off the charts abnormality, and therefore halacha l'maisa there'll be no liability in that case as well. Amar Rava, we'll say, so back to Balayon, this is a really interesting case, a really interesting statement. Amar Rava, Haiman de Baile Mishal Midi Michavre, the lifter. So we'll say, I watch this is great. I want to borrow Ruvain's ox, right? But I don't want any liability. Now, I learned Daf Yomi, so therefore I know that if I'm a borrower and I want to escape liability, what do I need to do? Baal of Imo, which means what? We've now defined that. What does that mean? That the owner of the object needs to be working for me at the time I borrow the object. So we'll say, watch this. So I say to Ruvain, Nemalei, Ashkian Maya, Tahavi Sheila Bailim. Ruvain, I'd love to borrow your ox. And do me a favor, as we're cementing this relationship, can you do me a favor, bring me a glass of water? So we'll say, what's the chap over here? Now, when Reuven brings me the glass of water, he is in my employ, right? Remember, working for me just means he's providing a service for me at the time of the borrowing. So both say, if I want to pull this shtick, so again, at the moment that I'm borrowing the animal, I ask Reuven to bring me a glass of water. He is in my employ, and suddenly again this becomes Shmir Ba'al. And I both say, remember again, we've established that halacha l'maisa, in order for it to be Ba'al of Imo, we've also established that what? The owner doesn't have to be in my employ the entire time. All I need is for him to be what in my employ when? At the moment that the borrowing occurs. V'ipikeachu, now we'll say, now if Reuven, the owner of the object, is also smart, ne'malei shal b'reish v'hadashkiach. Reuven should say, you know what? No problem. Let's just finish up business over here, then we'll make a l'chayim. In other words, why do we affect the borrowing first? I'll bring you the water afterwards. Okay. Amarava, Mikri Didardiki, Shasla, Tabcha v'Omna Sapar, Sapar Masa, Kulun be'idan avidatayu kisheila b'bailim damu. So what's the interesting case over here? These individuals listed over, Mikri Didardiki was a person, right, a Rebbe for young children. Shasla, Rashi says here, the Rashi goes through, Notea Kramam Metzia, a planter, right, a gardener, right, Tabcha, the butcher, Umna means the bloodletter. Sapar, the hair cutter, right? Sapar Masa. All of these people, I will say, were city workers, municipal workers. And therefore, again, at the time, ultimately, again, that they're provided. So in other words, what does it mean they're municipal workers? These people were paid by taxes. So therefore, again, they were considered to be in the employ of everyone in the city. Therefore, when they were working, if you were to go ahead and borrow something from the Rabosai, at the time that they were working, they are considered to be in the employ of the borrower. Okay, just an interesting thing that they would have to be aware of. Amrli Rabbanan Rava, Sha'il Mar. So the Rabbanan said to Rava, Rabbi, you are Sha'alan Mar. Rashi says over here, Sha'alan Mar, Rabbeinu nishalanu le'melachtenu, lilmod lanu Torah, sheyoshet umelamed lanu Torah kol hayom. V'im nishal mimeno behema, umeisa nifter. We'll say this is fascinating. So the Rabbanan said to Rava, Rabbi, you are Sha'alan Mar, you are considered borrowed by us. Borrowed by us. In other words, that ultimately, again, you are hired out to us for work, right? You are your bar to us doesn't it's not the right English, which you understand. You're lent to us, which really means what they're saying is, Rebbe, you are in our employ, right? You work for us because you're hired to teach us Torah the entire day. And what that means is as follows. What they were saying is, Rebbe, if we were to if you were to go ahead and lend us something, ultimately, again, if something were to happen to the object we borrowed from you, we'd be pater. Why would we be pater? Why? Ba'al of Imo. Because you are, so to speak, employed by us. So the Gemara says, Ikbid. Rava was offended. Right? Are you trying to go ahead and extract money from me? In other words, you're trying to say that if I ever lend you anything, you're never going to be liable because it's Ba'al of Imo. Adrabba. Rava said just the opposite. Asun shiltonli. No. It is not the Rebbe who works for the Talmud, but instead it is the Talmud who works for the Rebbe. How so? Di'ilu ana masi ishtamuti l'chumi mesekta l'mesekta. This is very interesting because Rava said, how do I know that I'm right, that you work for me and I don't work for you? For the simple reason, if I choose that, hey, today we're starting a new Masechta, I have the right to do that, whereas you, my beloved Talmidim, you do not have the ability to do that. Interesting. Okay. Velohi, the Gemara says it's not really true, it's really a little bit of both. Iu shaluhu b'yom dekala. So we'll say on the day of the kala, the arche kala. What does it mean? The yom dekala. Rashi says kishadar shlif mi'aregel behilchos haregel to l'matzi l'shtamut l'musachrisi. So we'll say. So remember again, it was customary that they would gather before every yom tiv to learn the halachos of that yom tiv. It would be like a yomi yun, right? The day of study. Now on that day, the Rebbe doesn't have the right to change the topic. Why not? Because everyone is gathered to learn the halachos of that particular yontiv. So on that day where the Rebbe doesn't have the power to change the topic, therefore what? Therefore the Rebbe is considered to be employed by the Talmidim. But on every other day, where the Rebbe does have the power to change the topic. Ultimately, again, the Rebbe is considered to be in charge, in the employer, so to speak, and the Talmidim are in his employ. So I'll say it's also beautiful. It's the nature of this Rebbe-Talmid relationship, this synergistic relationship, that sometimes the Rebbe works for the Talmidim, and sometimes the Talmidim work for the Rebbe. It's this back and forth, this beautiful synergistic partnership. I'll say it also tells you something amazing. Who is considered to be in control? Anyone who is able to change the topic. I'll say, and this is a tremendous Musar Haskell. Sometimes in life, we find ourselves, right, in situations where I see that there is a conversation that is escalating, or there's a conversation that is degenerating into Lashon Hara. I will say, always remember that you have the power to change the conversation. You have the power to change the conversation. You have the power, when you see something escalating, you have the power to change the conversation and de-escalate. You see things degenerating into Lashon Hara, into negative speech, you have the ability to change the topic. The person who has the power to change the topic, that's the boss. That's the boss. Right? That's the employer. And that power is such a profound power. And I'm about to say, so it happens to all of us, right? We see ourselves in a conversation like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe it is heading in this direction. Either it's a topic that's just totally not appropriate, it's words that are not appropriate, conversation that's not appropriate, or just I see that this is heating up in a way. If each of us has the power to change the topic. Each of us has the power to be the employer. Each of us has the power to be the boss. Use it. Use that koach whenever necessary. Incredible. The Gemara goes weiter. Oger kudinaisa beichozai. So as I watch this, Mereimar Bar Chanina, he lent donkeys or mules, right, in beichozai. Okay, so he was lending his animals out. So nafik lidiluye tu'una ba'adahu. So we'll say what happened. Now he went out to help them, to help the borrowers, or to help the renters. But to help the renters, go ahead and load up the donkeys. So pashuba. So the renters ended up being negligent. Umis, and the donkeys died. So they came before Rava, and Abbas and I watched this. Chayvinu. And Rava said, listen, renters, you were negligent, therefore you're chayiv. The rabbi says, Rava, what? Pshi b'bailami. That's not true. Remember Rava, Mereimar was helping them load up the donkeys, which means what Rabbi said, this was Baal of Imo. If it's Baal of Imo, then what? Then the renter is pater, even for Pshia. So the Rabbanan said to Rava, why are you paskening? That the renters are chayiv. So the Gemara says, Ichsif, Rava was embarrassed. So we'll say it turned out, by the way, that Rava wasn't wrong, the Rava was right. Why? Mereimar ultimately, again, didn't go out to help them load. Rather, he was going out to supervise the loading. See, he was never actively involved in working for them. Therefore, it's not Baal of Imo. And therefore, Allah Lamaisa, they are responsible for the negligence. So the Gemara says, So we'll say, so first of all, 1 second. Remember, we saw that there was a machlokes whether or not Baal of Imo exempts the renter or the borrower from Pshia. So if you hold that Baal of Imo exempts him even from Pshia, so then it makes sense why Rava was embarrassed. So the Gemara says, So the Gemara says, but if you hold that Allah Lamaisa, Baal of Imo does not exempt Pshia, then why was Rav embarrassed? To which the Gemara says, you're right. Lo mifsha pashubuhu, ela ignovi ignov, umesa kedarka began vihavi. So I'll say, rather, what was the case? The case is where, again, Mereimar lent his donkeys, or rented his donkeys to these guys in Beichozai. The donkeys were, and now, Bepashas, we thought before that Mereimar was going out, loading it up with them, and then again, the donkeys were stolen and died by the thief. Vaslo kamei Rava, they came before Rava v'chayvinhu, and Rava held that they were chayiv. Because at the end of the day, again, remember, a socher, a renter and a shol is chayiv for geneva v'aveda. Then the Rabbanan said to Rava, geneva b'bailim. 1 second, this is theft that has took place. It's in Bailav, because after all, Mereimar was helping them load up the donkey. So then, Ichsif, Rava became embarrassed. He thought that he ruled wrongly. L'sof iglai milsa to l'meisra tuna dinafik. And Rabbi said, then it turned out that what? It turned out that no, Rava wasn't wrong. Why? Because Mereimar never helped out. Mereimar was supervising. So because he was supervising, therefore no Baal of Imo, and therefore Allah Lamaisa, ultimately again, Ultimately, because it was no balavimo, therefore again the renters were chayiv for geneva va'aveda, and Maremar's psak halacha, and Rava's psak halacha was right. So therefore, both say we emerge from this last piece of the sugya with a couple of important nuggets of information. Mesa machmas malacha in a case of shoel, right, is going to be pater, and therefore certainly if the animal is weakened as a result of malacha, going to be pater. There are certain cases where even though a shoel is chayiv for own sins, certain cases that are so off the charts that halacha l'maaseh even the shoel will not be chayiv. Who's the boss, the Rebbe or the Talmidim? Generally, again, the halacha is the Rebbe is the boss because he could change the topic, right? So therefore, again, the students are considered to be in the employ of the Rebbe, except on certain days where the Rebbe doesn't have the ability to change the topic, in which case it is the students who are considered to be the employees or the employers of the Rebbe. Incredible. All right, bro, say Mishnah. Here we go. Hashola sapara. So we'll say, here we go. Hashola sapara. Person, I borrow a cow. Shala chatziyom v'sar chatziyom. So we'll say, okay, so now we're going to get into some very interesting cases over here. I go ahead and the way the deal is structured is, I'm borrowing it for half a day and renting it for half a day. Now, boss, you'll say to yourself, what's going on over here? Now, remember, a shoel and a socher have two different levels of responsibility. Right? Remember, again, a shoel is chayiv for everything, a socher is not. Now, we're going to say this is machlokes, exactly how you treat a socher, a renter. Is a socher like a shomer chinam? Is a socher like a shomer sachar? But one thing is clear, which is what? He's not a shoel. So in this case over here, something very interesting is happening. I am taking into my possession a cow that belongs to Ruvain. For half a day, the agreement is for a rental, and for the other half a day, the agreement is for borrowing. Okay? So the Gemara says, Shalach hatziyom v'sachar chatziyom, or Shalach hayom v'sachar l'machar, or I'm taking it for 2 days. Day 1, it's a rental, and day 2, it's borrowing. Sachar achas or shal achas, or I take 2 cows from Ruvain. One of them I'm renting, one of them I'm borrowing. So both say, umeisa. Now we'll say now, of course, we know this was coming. The animal dies. Now watch this. Hamashil omer shula mesa. So we'll say, so now watch this. So now the owner of the cow says it was the borrowed one that died. The borrowed one that died, or b'yom shaisa shula mesa, or again, I will say if I borrowed. So I will say, so this was a case. Let's say I borrowed 2 cows, right? One I borrowed, one I rented. So now one of the cows dies. We're not sure which cow, right? The cows all look alike. So right, so now the owner of the borrowed cow is the one who's saying my animal died. Or I will say, let's say I borrowed 2 cows or 1 cow from Ruvain. And what happened for 2 days? One day I rented it, one day I borrowed it. The cow died on one of the days, and now Reuven is claiming it died on the day that it was borrowed. Amud Beis. Oh, look at that, right? Or B'shah Shahaisa Shula Mesa, or Rabbi say in the case where I borrowed the cow for 1 day, right? Half of the day was borrowing, half of the day was renting. So Rabbi say, so now in all of these cases, Reuven, right, is making the claim, we'll just call him Reuven, is making the claim that halacha l'maaseh, the animal that died, or the period during which it died, or the day on which it died, was a time of she'ela, was a time of borrowing. And therefore, Reuven is essentially claiming is, I am completely liable. Right? Either borrow, because again, either the animal that I borrowed died, the day that was reserved for borrowing is the day on which it died, or the half a day, right? The hours of borrowing, that's when it died. So Reuven's making the definitive claim that it was the borrowed animal that passed away. Va'ala omer eini yodea. Now I will say, I respond, I don't know. I really don't know. I know that the animal died, right? I don't know. Is it the borrowed animal that died? Is on the day that I borrowed it died? The day of borrowing it died? The half a day that I borrowed it? I don't know. What's the halacha? Chayiv. Now I will say, now what's the logic? Why am I chayiv? So Rashi points out over here, bari v'shema bari adif. Whenever you have a case where someone's making a definitive claim and someone simply says, I don't know, so obviously the person who makes the definitive claim has a stronger halachic footing to stand on. Right? Reuven's saying, I know it was the borrowed animal, right, that died. And I'm saying, I don't know. Bari v'shema, a definitive claim, right? That's bari, shema, a possible claim, or just an unknown claim. Bari adif, the definitive claim wins. Next, hasocher was schura mesa. So we'll say, now watch this. Similarly, again, let's say again it was the renter now, right, or I should say the owner of the rented animal who claims that it was the rented animal that dies, Biyom shaisa schura mesa, or the owner of the rented animal says it was on the day of the rental that the animal died, Bishah shaisa schura mesa, or for that matter, again, at the time that the animal was rented out to me is the time that it died, V'hala omer eni yodea, and again, I say, I don't know, I literally don't know, pater, ultimately, again, in that case, I'm going to be pater. Now again, I'll say, we'll see why all of this is true. Ze omer she'ula, v'ze omer schora. So I'll say, now watch this. So in the first two cases, people are making definitive claims, and I, the person in possession of the animal, is simply saying, I don't know. So I'll say, now watch this. Ze omer she'ula, v'ze omer schora. So we'll say, so let's go with this. Let's say again, I'm in possession of two animals, right? So I borrowed two animals, right? One from Reuven, one from Shimon. The one from Reuven is a borrowed animal. The one from Reuven is a rented animal. Now what happens? One of them dies, and I don't know which one died. Reuven's claiming it's my borrowed animal. Shimon's claiming it is my rented animal. So Ze Omer She'ula, Ze Omer Schora. So we'll say, what's the halacha? Yishava. So ultimately, again, I have to take an oath, right? Yeshava asocher sheschura mesa. Right? So ultimately, again, we'll see that halacha l'maisa in this case, the renter swears that it was the rented animal that dies. Now we'll say why this is, who's taking a shavua, when we're gonna kind of work this all through in the Gemara. So the Gemara says, Ze omer eni yodea, v'ze omer eni yodea. We'll say, what happens if everyone says, oh, we don't know, right? We just don't know what happened over here. Which is the animal that died? No one really knows what's going on. Then the halacha is yachloku. The halacha is we split it. Okay, so we'll say, so obviously a lot to unpack in all of these cases. Let's at least begin the Gemara together. Shamas mina, we'll say something very important comes out from this sugya. Mara li biyadecha, v'alo omer eni yodea, chayiv. So we'll say, now, remember, let's go back to the first case for just a moment. The first case, what I'll say is, let's just keep it simple, right? I go ahead and I borrow two animals from Reuven, right? One is a borrowed animal, one is a rented animal. The animal dies, one of the animals die. Reuven says it was the borrowed animal. I recognize the cow that died, right? We had the viewing, right? I saw the animal, I could place that face anywhere, right? I know that is my borrowed animal. I say, listen, I don't know. So what's the halacha? The halacha is I'm chayiv. Why? I will say the Gemara said because Rashi pointed out bari v'shema bari adif. Reuven's making a definitive claim. Reuven's saying I'm telling you that is the borrowed animal. I'm saying I just don't know. I don't know. So Reuven's definitive claim wins over my what's the word I'm looking for? Equivocal. Yeah. Okay. I really want to say is non-definitive claim, but it doesn't. Good. Equivocal. Okay. Uncertain. That's it. Thank you. Uncertain claim. Good. Ari Lichtman. You got that? Zari. Together. Mesha Abrams and Ari Lichtman. Shkoyach. All right. Good. Excellent. Uncertain claim. Right. That's it. Reuven is making a definitive, certain claim, right? And ultimately, again, I'm just making an uncertain. I'm saying, I'm not saying you're right. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't know. So now watch. It says more shamas mina. What do we see from here? Marali biyadecha. That if I go over to him and say, Reuven, you owe me $100. Valo omer eni yodea, and Reuven says, I don't know. We spoke about this on Shabbos, the Rashash. I don't know, right? Sometimes you pay a person money back, and they're just not sure. I don't know. Chayiv. That ultimately, again, that Reuven is going to be chayiv to pay. So we'll say this would seem to refute the position of Nachman. What does Nachman say? The itmar manali biyadecha v'ala omer eni yodea. So we'll say, listen to this. I go over to Reuven and say, Reuven, you owe me $100. And Reuven says, I don't know. Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda amri chayiv. So Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda say you're chayiv, right? Bari v'shema bari adif. I'm making a certain claim, right? The definitive claim. Reuven saying I don't know. He's uncertain. So my claim wins out over Reuven's claim. Rav Nachman and Rabbi Yochanan amar pater. So we'll say, now watch this. Rav Nachman and Rabbi Yochanan say pater. Now we'll say, why do they say pater? Rashi says, uki mamone becheskas marei v'lo safkir misveka. We'll say, no, you can't do this. We'll say, the way this works is like this. And first of all, in order to be able to remove money, right? We have in general, we'll say when it comes to money, there's one guiding light principle. What's the guiding light principle? Uki mamoni becheskas marei. And we'll say, whoever has the money is the presumed owner of that money. How do you change that presumption? How do you change that? Proof. proof, and a claim is not a proof. So therefore, we're going to stop over here for today. We'll pick up with this again tomorrow. But just understand, the Mishnah seems to make it so simple that bari v'shema bari adif. So therefore, I go over to Reuven and say, Reuven, I'm telling you, I'm $100. Reuven is saying, I don't know. So based on the Mishnah, oh, okay, Reuven's chayiv. Twitch the merchant says, just know that this is a machlokes. Rav Nachman, Rabbi Yochanan will say, no. Whenever you have bari v'shema, right, we say, uki mamona becheskas mareh. You want to change the financial status quo. The burden of proof is upon the extractor. Emirat Hashem to be continued tomorrow. Bosai, shkoyach.
Now my question, Rabbi Anamar, question, loading the donkey question. Even if it's not a case of Bava,